Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Louise Calix Florestal, and you are watching Faith to Faith. I'm so excited to have you watching this video, and I pray it's going to be a blessing. I pray it's going to be something that's going to resonate with you, and it's going to be relevant to your story and your walk. So I hope you guys had a great week. Last week I didn't record. I chose to engage in some amazing Juneteenth celebration festivities that were happening around my city. It was just awesome. I went to a great gospel concert, and it was just truly beautiful. So this week I'm back at it. The truth is I'm not feeling that great, but you know what I mean. I really want to try to stay consistent because you know what, God did not neglect to give me breath of life this morning. So I'm gonna try to stay consistent with the messages and the words that He gives me. All right, everybody, we're about to get right into it, okay? Today, I want to study an interesting figure. His name is King Hezekiah. He was a king of Judah. Now, he's really known for a lot of great things that he did. He had sweeping religious reform in Judah during his reign. He broke down so many evil altars. He broke down so many like a false idol worshiping that was happening in Judah. So he was really considered pretty righteous in God's sight. So he was a good king, which is great because I read these books of the kings, and it's just evil king after evil king. However, he had one other thing that he was really known for. And people typically use this story to show the power of prayer. And in a way, it is, but there's also a very tragic aspect of it that I really want to point out to us today. So, this part of the story is found in 2 Kings 20. 2 Kings 20. Please read about his life in the book of Kings whenever you have time and you're able. I'm not going to go into all that aspect, but I want to read a few verses from 2 Kings 20 to share this story that we're going to base our video off today. So, about that time, Hezekiah became deathly ill, and the prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz, went to visit him. He gave the king this message. This is what the Lord says: Set your affairs in order, for you are going to die. You will not recover from this illness. Pretty crazy, right? So when Hezekiah heard this, he turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. Remember, O Lord, how I have always been faithful to you and have served you single-mindedly, always doing what pleases you. Then he broke down and wept bitterly. But before Isaiah had left the courtyard, this message came to him from the Lord. Go back to Hezekiah, the leader of my people. Tell him this is what the Lord, the God of your ancestor David, says. I have heard your prayer and seen your tears. I will heal you, and 3 days from now you will get out of bed and go to the temple of the Lord. I will add 15 years to your life, and I will rescue you and this city from the king of Assyria. So, what we can gather from what we just read in 2 Kings 20 is that Hezekiah was sick, deathly sick. And it was like God gave him a heads up and said, hey, get your affairs in order because this is going to end in death. And Hezekiah was just devastated. He was bitter. He wept bitterly about it. And when you read that word bitter in the verse, that should give you a little context of what he was really going through, his mental and emotional state. He was not happy about the news that he was given. And of course, none of us would be. But if we can look at it from a different perspective, imagine nearing the end of your life and being given a heads up to the Lord to, hey, get your affairs in order. Whatever that you need to take care of, take care of it. So many people don't get that kind of heads up and they suffer these unexpected deaths. And it's really devastating because of the surprise of it. So in a way, it was like God was truly giving him a blessing, but he was really bitter about it. And even before the prophet who gave him this news left the courtyard, God heard the prayer of Hezekiah. And he said, hey, I'm going to heal you and I'm going to give you 15 more years. And when you look at this from the outset, you're like, wow, look at the power of prayer. A man who was going to die now got 15 more years. And absolutely, this is typically the way that people look at this verse about the amazing power of prayer. But I want us to look at this a little deeply and to see that actually Hezekiah had an issue of trust in God. And we can see as to what happened, what was going on with him, why God said, hey, get your affairs in order. And I think when he was saying, get your affairs in order, it wasn't just like the things of the kingdom, because he was the king of Judah, but I think it was also about get your heart in order, because there were truly some heart issues that Hezekiah had not addressed. And what happened in this process really put on display the heart issues that he had. In my humble opinion, I think that God gave him 15 more years because he just wasn't ready. Had he gone into his grave at this point, he wouldn't have been settled. He wouldn't have been at peace, and he wouldn't have done exactly what God told him to do, which is get your heart, get your life, get your things in order. He had some issues, and God has said, you know what? You're going to get 15 more years to work these things out. But here's the crazy thing, and this is why this topic is really about how deep is your trust. Because when you look at what God is doing, like, yeah, it looks like he has a point. Why are you taking this king's life? He was a good king. Why are you doing this, God? But God knew some things that Hezekiah didn't know. And I think God was really trying to prevent him from experiencing those things. And because of the lack of trust that he had, because of that lack of trust, instead of avoiding them like God intended, he actually experienced them. I want to go in and share two things that happened within those 15 years that Hezekiah lived. Two major things happened within those 15 extra years of time that he had, which wouldn't have originally happened had, he, listened to the Lord and just set his affairs in order. One, he had a son called Manasseh. An amazing thing for any parent, of course, to have a child, but I'm going to go deeper into this son that he had called Manasseh. And two, he had the second experience of he had visitors from Babylon come and visit Judah. You would think an honor, but let's explore the consequences. Okay, let's talk about his son Manasseh. Manasseh, the son that he had probably 3 years after this miraculous healing, basically uprooted everything that Hezekiah had done in his lifetime. I told you that he was known for amazing, sweeping religious reform in Judah, and yet his son literally reversed everything that he did. He incited the people to go back to idol worship. And I want to read some of the things that he did, because his son Manasseh was truly a wicked, wicked king. I'm just going to grab these notes and I'll read some of the things that he did. Okay. So, as I said, Hezekiah had undertaken reforms in Judah to rid the land of idolatry. Manasseh, a wicked king, reversed these reforms and did much worse. Okay. And you could read all about that in 2 Kings 21. You'll hear a stunning account of Manasseh's apostasy. Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 55 years. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. Following the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. He rebuilt the high places his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He also erected altars to Baal and made an Asherah pole, as Ahab, king of Israel, had done. He bowed down to all the starry host and worshipped them. He built altars in the temple of the Lord. In the 2 courts of the temple of the Lord, he built altars to all the starry hosts. He sacrificed his own son in the fire. He practiced divination. He sought omens and consulted mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in the sight of the Lord, arousing God's anger. He was also a treacherous king, killing innocent people. The Bible said the Manasseh also shed so much innocent blood that he filled Jerusalem from end to end. He was pronounced by God to be more wicked than the Amorites who had lived in Canaan before they were displaced by Israel in the acts of God's judgment. And not only did Manasseh sin personally, but as king, he led Judah in forsaking the Lord and worshiping idols. Such was the extent of their sin that God declared he would wipe out Jerusalem as he had the northern king of Israel. You know, it's interesting because Hezekiah was such a good king because he saw the devastation that occurred in the northern kingdom of Israel as a result of idolatry. That's why he was so zealous in saying, like, I can't do that. We're going to have reform in Judah. And his son literally uprooted everything he did. His son literally messed up his legacy. Okay. And you hear this stuff. It wasn't just like, oh, he did a few things. He allowed his own son to go through the fire, which means he sacrificed him in idol worship, which is terrible. And if you could do that to your own child, imagine what he did to other innocent people. He killed so many innocent people. As you could see, this was a child that just wrought havoc within the kingdom. So that's one. That is bad enough. The second thing that Hezekiah did within those 15 years is that some people, some foreigners from Babylon came to visit him because they actually heard, listen to this, y'all, they actually heard about the miraculous healing that Hezekiah had been given by God of his illness. And when they came to visit him, who do you think they wanted to know about? Who do you think they wanted to get more information about? They wanted to get to know the God who healed him. But instead of telling them about the miraculous God who healed him, Hezekiah showed them the riches of his kingdom. So pride must have got into him or something. So he's showing these foreign men his treasure and his gold in Judah. And it was just terrible. He did not give glory to God. And you know, God doesn't play that. God wants his glory, not because he's big-headed, because he deserves it. But what's really tragic to me is that because he showed these men the gold of Judah, they became gold and power lustful. They got this gold lust over them. And many years later, remember how Babylon invaded Judah? It was because they saw these riches, so they came after them. And this is why we had the Babylonian captivity and all the people of Israel. I mean, all the people of Judah of Israel, they were given into exile. It's because of this act of Hezekiah. 15 years literally wiped out every good that he had done within his reign as king. The results were just devastating, and his generations, his kingdom suffered as a result. It was truly devastating when you read about, the results of those 15 years. Like, you realize it was not worth it, and you see that God is a good God who wanted to prevent all this stuff from happening to Hezekiah. But because he had this lack of trust in God's determination and judgment, all this happened. So I want us to discuss a few things, 2 points. I don't want to keep you guys today, and I hope I hope I can keep this brief and concise. But there's 2 points I want to go into about the lack of trust, and we don't want to be Hezekiah's. We don't want to be in that way where we uproot all the good things that we've done in our lives because of a lack of trust. And the first point that I want to make is that lack of trust will keep you short-sighted. Okay? Any success that you have, if you have a problem with trusting God, it will be short-sighted and short lived. Okay. And I want to just tell you what my definition of success is. My definition of success is basically doing exactly what I was created to do upon this earth. What were you called to be? What were you called to do on this earth? That's where you're going to be most successful. That's where you're going to receive the most prosperity. That's where you're going to receive your joy, your purpose, your assignment. It's really important that that should be a working definition of what success is, because a lot of people have money and they're throwing themselves off buildings and committing suicides. The issue that I feel that we have as a people is that we feel that we can determine the best route for our own success. And we can't see as far past our nose. We really can't. We don't know what's going to be good for us for the present as well as for the future, but God knows. And that's why having trust in his wisdom and his judgment is so important. I think about the story of Blockbuster. Uh, a highly successful video company, okay? The only issue that they had was that they were short sighted. They didn't see the oncoming genesis and evolution of streaming services and how it would take over the internet and take over the world by storm. And they had the opportunity to basically work with Netflix, but they didn't take it. Okay. And they didn't take the opportunity. And to this day, there's not one Blockbuster store that you'll see in existence anymore, unless it's a remnant of the past. But that just goes to show you, when we put our trust in our own wisdom and our trust in our own ability, any success we have will be short lived, and it will be very short sighted. I want to point to the example of Abraham. Now, Abraham was an example of a man who wasn't perfect. He made a lot of mistakes in a lot of areas where he didn't trust God. As you can see, we're still suffering for his mistakes to this day, because there's still fighting going on in Palestine because of the decision that he made to have Ishmael outside of the covenant for which God had said, you will bear a son. But eventually he got it. He learned to trust in the Lord. And let me tell you, because he had that trust in God, and you can tell he had that trust in God because God asked him to sacrifice his son, and he trusted in the character and goodness of God so much that he's willing to give him his son. Read the story in Genesis, that at the end, God said, you'll have so many children, okay? His trust in God allowed him to have a legacy far beyond what he ever expected. His legacy to this day is still well and alive, because even today we are called children of Abraham by faith. Children of Abraham by faith. That's what we're called. So to this day, his legacy lives on because he trusted in God. You see, God will be able to set you up to give you success that will happen for your present, and success that will endure for the future, and success that will even continue for your next generations. You'll have a rich legacy if you learn to trust in the Lord, because you know what? The owners of Blockbuster didn't see internet streaming. They didn't see video streaming. They didn't see that future. But guess what? God knows. He can tell you things that will allow you to be established ahead of the curve. But if you think only by your own knowledge and foresight you're going to be able to establish yourself, good luck. You must be a fortune teller, and we know if that's not the spirit of God telling you that, that's not good. That's not good. So you can't know what will be, what will come. Only God knows. That's why it's so pivotal. It's critical that you trust in God. Hezekiah didn't care about his generations, and it was really a bad character flaw in him. When God told him, hey, this is what's going to happen, but in your lifetime, you're going to see peace and security, but your next generations are going to suffer. He didn't care. He was like, okay, it's all good as long as my lifetime. So he had a selfishness problem. Okay, so we can't only be working to establish our own futures, but we got to think about the next generation. We got to establish something for our legacy. And God sets us up to be able to do just that. Because you know what? God cares about the future generations, and so should we. Okay, so that's the first point. The second point that I'm going to make is that if you don't put your trust in God, then your trust will ultimately rely on something or someone else, regardless. Guys, we're humans, okay? We're created to rely and depend and trust in God. And if we don't, that doesn't mean that, oh, I'm just going to choose to trust in me, myself, and I. No, you're going to end up putting your trust in something, in someone else. But it's going to be very shaky. It's going to be a very unstable ground that you're building your life upon. It's going to be like building your life on sand and not upon the rock, which is God. Now, there are people that decide to put their trust in a job. But guess what? Look what happened to the pandemic. Look how many people got laid off. Look how many people lost their jobs during the pandemic. Anything can happen. If anything, this was supposed to show you that we can't put our trust in anything other than God. If some people put their trust in a spouse, and then God forbid something bad happens and that spouse is not able to provide, or that spouse is no longer there. Some people, I have to say this, some people even put their trust in security and future in their children. Some people literally have children so that their future can be established, so that they can have someone to take care of them when they're older. Now, listen to me well. I think as children, it's a moral right. It's a moral choice to love and honor and care for our parents. You know what I mean? I've always told my mother, like, you will not see a nursing home. I love my mom. That will never be the case. However, the problem is relying on any man, depending on man or flesh for anything. Your security must be in God. God forbid, again, something happens to the children that you are depending and relying on. Or, you have children that have bad characters or something of that nature. You're not supposed to be relying on them regardless. When you have children to release them into the world to do God's work, you know? And when people start to rely on their children, they become a bit of an idol, and they become a bit controlling over those children. So if God were to tell that child, "Hey, I want you to be a painter," you're going to sit you're going to stand in opposition to the will of God, because you're saying, hey, you can't make any money as a painter, and that means you won't be able to take care of me. No, don't do that. I need you to be a doctor so that, in the future, you'll be able to take care of me. That is a wrong mindset. It's a wrong mindset. It's a toxic mindset. Your mindset must be, no matter what, my trust in God, because anything else might fall away. But God is the only secure thing that we as humans actually have. So literally, we can't put our trust in anything. We can't put our trust in jobs. We can't put our trust in anything but in the word of God. And if we put our trust in anything, guess what? We won't be able to release those things so that God can give us greater and better. We won't be able to have the courage to pursue God's next, because we think, hey, this is our source of security. Okay. This reminds me of how God had led me to a job, the job that I had for the past 6 years, and at first it was kind of rough. I was like, God, you led me to this, but it's, I'm kind of going from paycheck to paycheck. It's tight, but I trusted in God. I listened to him. And eventually God was basically able to just do miraculous things, and I had promotion upon promotion. And by the time I left there, I was getting paid very well. But then, I got married and left that place because simply I was following God's will, and I moved to a whole different state with a different dynamic and a different set of circumstances in terms of the job market. But this didn't worry me. In the beginning, I had questions, I had doubts. I was like, oh Lord, I'm like, man, I'm not going to be able to get paid the way I was getting paid before. But you know what? God always sets you up for greater and better. And there'll be a season where you might experience lack, but it's really just to set you up. As I said, God is like that slingshot. When he pulls you back, it's not to hold you back, but it's to propel you to go even further than you ever thought possible. And God is giving me a whole new vision of greater and better. But if I was sitting there worried about what, the job that he had given me before, I would never be in the mindset to be ready for the greater and better. That's what happens when your trust is in God and not in the flesh, not in man, not in a job, not in anything but Him. You will be set up for great and marvelous things. So, drop that. So, guys, I'm not going to keep you today. I promised myself I'm just going to try to be, again, concise and to the point and keep it short today. I just want to let you know, guys, that you can trust God. You can trust him. He wants good for you. Even if there's bad news, but know that God is just setting you up, because remember, what Job said is so true. Though he slay me, yet I will trust him. No matter what's going on, you may not know the context behind what's going on, but God is with you. He is good and he's for you. You can trust in his plans for your future. You can trust in what he's doing for your life. It's going to be better than anything you expected. So if you want success in this life, if you want a good thing to happen for you and your progeny, there's no other way but trusting in God. I'm telling you, if you trust in yourself, trust in your own knowledge, you're going to reach a dead end. But when it's God, like leading your footsteps, doors will be open that you didn't imagine. Lights will be turning green for you that you didn't think would be turning green. So again, I encourage you, trust in God. That trust in God is the key to your uprising. It is the key to your elevation. It's the key to your success. And it's the key to a great legacy. All right. God bless you guys. Love you. See you again. Bye.